Unmanned aircraft, VTOL on demand, commercial spaceflight. What's the future of aviation technology and how will it affect your business aviation operation? From the National Business Aviation Association, this is Flight Plan. I'm Pete Combs with your trusted source for business aviation news. For years, NBAA has been at the forefront of emerging technologies in aviation. You see evidence of that at our regional events, and of course you see it every year at NBAA's Business Aviation Convention and Exhibition. And now, NBAA itself is changing, creating a new committee of NBAA members to better help lead the way in the development and use of these exciting new technologies. Joining me now, Brad Hayden. He's the president and CEO of Robotic Skies in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He now chairs the new Emerging Technologies Committee. Paul McDuffie at Boeing is the committee's vice chair. He's speaking to us now from Daytona Beach, Florida. And from NBAA headquarters in Washington, D.C., Heidi Williams is the association's Director of Air Traffic Services and Infrastructure. She's also the staff liaison for the new Emerging Technologies Committee. Heidi, before we talk about the committee itself, let's spend a moment talking about some of NBAA's work getting to this point in bringing the issue of emerging technologies to the forefront.
NBA has been active in this space for many years. We've participated on a number of FAA's aviation rulemaking committees, which are called ARCs. So everything from remote ID to UAS and controlled airspace, and then recently on a number of commercial space ARCs, looking at spaceport categorization and as well as airspace prioritization, which really encompassed our manned community, as well as all of the new entrants, new type of emerging technologies that we're trying to merge into today's airspace. So we have been very active in a number of standard setting bodies, both domestically and in the ICAO arena. So certainly recognize the importance of this emerging space. And I think we need to spend a little more time, resources, and tap into the expertise of our business aviation members and potentially new members on this emerging technology, things like urban air mobility, UAS, commercial space.
So Heidi, tell me a little bit about the actual process of standing up this committee.
We've, for about the last 4 to 5 years, been operating a UAS working group under our Business Aviation Management Committee. And, we kicked off looking at UAS, doing some initial integration into our management guide on UAS practices and how we thought that space was going to evolve, at least for the business aviation community. But it became really clear to us we needed a greater focus on this and also needed to expand beyond UAS because there's some emerging technologies with urban air mobility, with eVTOL, with AI that honestly, we needed a greater focus and needed to expand the role of that working group. So we ultimately decided to go to our board and talk about a standing committee. And when we developed that standing committee and the scope and the charter of that committee, we recognized that this was well beyond UAS. So that's really the process internally. We went to our board, we talked to them. They certainly supported the establishment of a committee that's looking at all things that kind of encompass emerging technologies.
Brad, of course, you're the new chairman of this committee, and you're very familiar with just how quickly we've seen advances in these fields. Not only is the industry advancing, but regulations also having to advance very quickly to catch up. So if you would, tell us a little bit about how you see this process unfolding and how you see the committee's part in all of that.
This year's been an exciting year for regulatory developments for the unmanned space. We've been given direction from the regulatory authorities. We've seen an NPRM for UAS flights over people. We saw an ANPRM for SUAS, safe and secure operations. We've also seen Google Wing, for example, get a Part 135 certificate, operator certificate, to be able to conduct drone delivery within the test sites and the integration pilot program areas. BNSF is another example. They got a Part 91 operator certificate. Amazon and UPS have both applied for operator certificates to conduct operations. So we're starting to see the regulatory framework be put in place for these types of automated operations to take place, which is really laying the groundwork for what we're going to be seeing going forward into the urban air mobility space. So we're starting to see a path forward for us being able to conduct these types of operations in the airspace. We're also seeing a lot of increased harmonization of the global industry standards. So we're seeing movement along ASTM, ANSI. We're seeing, ICAO from a global level. So really exciting things on the regulatory front. It feels like we're starting to see the progress that's going to be required for us to be able to implement these types of operations. Also, we're seeing some really interesting complex use cases that are starting to come out within the industry along the lines of drone delivery, not just consumer drone delivery, but business to business drone delivery as well. So things like drones being able to deliver supplies to ships in harbor, for example. These are the types of use cases that are really going to make a difference to the industry, that are going to be able to move it forward, that are also going to be very pertinent to our NBAA members.
Heidi, Brad mentioned with all these new technologies entering the airspace, we're not only talking about unmanned aircraft systems, but also the potential for autonomous vehicles taking people from point A to point B. It seems a lot like unmanned traffic management, UTM, is a big part of this process. So if you would, please tell me a little bit about how you see the committee addressing that particular issue.
You're absolutely right. UTM, or unmanned traffic management, is certainly going to play a critical role, especially in that lower altitude spectrum. So typically what some refer to as uncontrolled airspace, at least in that lower altitude stratum, where we don't typically see air traffic management enacted for the most part. There appears to be an opportunity for a lot more activity in that lower altitude stratum, or is certainly some autonomous or UAS, UAM type of activity in a metroplex environment where we typically already have very dense traffic operations. And to add to what we have typically referred to as ATM, or air traffic management, and rely on controllers to manage that traffic, would be almost impossible, if not incredibly difficult. So there's, this concept of UTM, where we could potentially have those lower altitude operations using autonomous vehicles to be handled through unmanned traffic management system. It's a networking of systems. This was a concept that was initially developed by NASA. They've worked that concept for a number of years with inputs from much of the industry. And so it's something we've been following as they do that tech transfer from NASA to FAA and explore this UTM arena. I think the committee's focus and scope of our activities will be to become much more involved in what that looks like, and how that evolves into an integration of these new emerging technologies into the airspace.
I'd like to bring Paul McDuffie into this conversation at this point. Paul, just like Committee Chairman Hayden, you seem to be very much immersed in many of these new technologies. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. Horizon X is relatively new to the Boeing company. It was founded roughly two and a half years ago. I've been with them about a year and a half now as the organization grew. Horizon X it's really unique to Boeing. The primary purpose for Horizon X was to go out and look for opportunities that traditional Boeing business units would or really could not go out and pursue on their own. All of the things that we look at are all within the overall Boeing strategic scope in terms of where we want to go in the transportation mobility disrupting market.
Brad, this is a lot for this new committee to take on. What do you see your priorities as being in the next, year, maybe 2 years?
Well, obviously, it's going to be around integrating these emerging technologies that we're seeing come to fruition. Again, Heidi mentioned the intersecting technologies uh, that are really enabling a lot of these advancements in the industry. So, if you're looking at technologies like aircraft electronics and what we've seen in advances just over GPS and the digitization, if you will, of the air traffic control system, increased power plant efficiencies, including battery technology, automation, and ultimately even artificial intelligence. There's going to be an enormous opportunity to build aircraft that will be truly revolutionary in nature. And again, we're already seeing these technologies support innovation in unmanned aircraft today. And those same advances are being extended to support this urban air mobility vision that will include these automated operations, things like drone delivery and autonomous air taxis. And these are going to be completely integrated into the national airspace system and are going to impact our current members, but also will impact other companies that are quickly coming to the realization that they are, in fact, not just technology companies, but also aerospace companies. They're developing aerospace products. And as an industry organization, we need to be ahead of these developments so that we can really best guide and represent our member companies into this new era of aviation. So it's really going to be focusing on areas that are going to be pertinent to this new technology development. So things like how are these aircraft going to be developed? How are they going to be certified? How are they going to be operated within the system? What kind of hurdles are we going to have to overcome from a regulatory and a standards development front? And how can we best represent these companies and their interests going forward? Really, everything that's going to be involved that is going to impact the implementation of this new technology to get us to realizing this urban air mobility vision. So again, for as an industry and also for our member companies. So we'll be concentrating on those items that they will bring to us. What are the hurdles that they're seeing? What are the things that they're having to overcome to be able to develop their products and bring those products to market. And it's going to relate to everything again from not just building the aircraft and building the different components and the technologies, but also the supporting infrastructure that's going to be required to actually enable this future vision. And that's going to include everything from the support to training to ground handling, all those different aspects of operations that we deal with today in manned operations that are going to basically be paralleled in this unmanned or this autonomous environment as well.
Brad, in your backyard there in Albuquerque, you have a tremendous spaceport and it continues to grow. And that brings up the question, how do you see commercial space entering the equation when we start talking about emerging technologies in business aviation?
Well, I think it's a great question, and I think that what's really exciting about commercial space is the aspect of not just taking tourists up into space, but also can we deliver other types of cargo and other types of real commercial applications beyond taking people up and showing them space and bringing them back. I think that's where it's going to start. But I think that we're going to see, just like we're seeing with unmanned systems, we'll start to see more complex use cases being developed. And I think it's going to be a huge segment of the future of business aviation environment. Space is the big frontier, if you will, of where we go next. And I think that's going to be something that we're absolutely going to need to be able to support. I think there's a lot of companies that are going to be building not just the aircraft or the airframes that are going to be going into space and delivering people and delivering cargo, but there's also going to be, again, the entire infrastructure that's going to be required to support that, which is going to be huge. And we're seeing that already down here in New Mexico with what we've got down here at the spaceport. I mean, that's no small facility and requires quite a bit of infrastructure to support that, and there's going to be a whole industry around that aspect of the segment as well.
Paul, tell me a little bit about your role as vice chair on the committee, and what do you hope to bring to the committee, and what would you like to see accomplished?
First off, I want to congratulate NBAA for even forming the committee and thinking ahead, because clearly this technology and these technologies are going to be transformative in the world of aviation. So I'm really glad to see them move forward in this space, because I really think they really have the potential to lead in the overall urban air mobility, emerging technology realm. Really, anything new from an emerging technology that's going to advance aviation usually finds its way into common use through business aviation. All of the real enhancements in flight control systems, navigation, communication, now even looking at things like supersonic business transport. I mean, these are things that have really been, to overuse the word, transformative in terms of how aviation advances over the years. So this seems like a really a logical step for them, and I hope that I can bring my half a century of effort and knowledge and experience and relationships to help NBAA move this thing successfully forward.
Heidi, it seems pretty clear that NBAA sees tremendous potential in these emerging technologies. The association obviously investing in methods to bring it forward and to address the needs within the business aviation framework.
We really do see the value of all of these new activities. Whether, I mean, I say new activities, but in all honesty, we've seen commercial space has been around for decades, so it's not a new activity per se. How we're operating and the frequency of those operations and some of the missions are newer. But we want to be able to embrace all of this new space, this new environment, and tap into the opportunities that are available for our members, but also to work that from the airspace perspective, where we look at how do we merge, or how do we transition rather, from segregation, which is largely what we're seeing with some of these new entrant type of activities, to a more integrated approach of operations. So, it's always a crawl, walk, run, phased approach to everything. But honestly, we've got to get to the point where we can integrate these activities. That's ultimately the goal, so that we can share what is really a finite resource. But we're very excited about the opportunities. I think we're as an association, we're really excited about this new committee and the expertise that committee, through Brad and Paul's leadership, will bring to this space, because I think NBA is going to be a key part of the discussion with industry, with FAA, with global folks like NSPs and ICAO, in helping folks understand how we integrate, how that certification through Part 135 is tackled. So lots of opportunities where we have typically, at least in the manned space, been very much a leader and an expert, and we want to offer that same expertise and leadership in these new emerging spaces, where we can take lessons learned, take the experience that we have as an industry, and parlay that over into this new space, so that we can move forward to that walk and run phase of integration just a little quicker.
Heidi, you mentioned crawl, walk, run. Where are we now in that process? Are we walking at this point?
I think that's very true. We've had over a decade of experience with UAS, actually probably a couple decades, if you look at the fact that DoD and others have utilized the technology for years. So certainly lots of lessons learned that we're now applying. And as Brad recognized, there's been a lot of activity on the regulatory front this year in starting to put forward some rules of the road and tapping into those years of experience in operating the systems, the data that's being collected through the UAS test sites, through the integration pilot program that FAA and DOT have stood up. So I think we are definitely in the beginnings of the walk phase, maybe on some of the other fronts with UAM and others were maybe still in the crawl phase, but I think all of that's going to come together and be able to move forward at a very at least a very good pace. We're getting there. We're getting there. I think we're going to see a lot of activities again on that regulatory front moving forward, probably in the next year to 24, 48 months. So we're excited about what lies ahead.
If I may add on Heidi's comment, especially regarding when we look at product life cycles or development cycles that we're used to in aerospace, because of the safety focus of our industry, our development cycles are really much longer than what we see in technology corporations, for example. And in the high-tech world, it's all about developing fast, failing fast, et cetera. Of course, that doesn't translate very well to the aerospace environment. So a lot of what we're seeing is almost a clash, if you will, between uh, high-tech companies that are coming into the aerospace area and trying to develop products in this fail-fast mentality, while we take a very measured approach from the traditional aerospace industry. The answer is going to be somewhere in the middle, because we need to get to this vision that we have of urban air mobility and automation and AI. We absolutely have to develop much faster than we're used to developing in the aviation space. So how do we balance that innovation and safety culture? And that's something we're dealing with as an industry. And I very much feel that that's something that we're going to be dealing with on our committee as well. How do we balance these two really competing objectives of developing very quickly, bringing products to market quickly, against how do we develop in a safety-based culture, if you will?
That's Brad Hayden, President and CEO of Robotic Skies. He's the chairman of the new NBAA Emerging Technologies Committee. We've also been talking with the vice chair of this new committee, Boeing's Paul McDuffie, and with NBAA's Heidi Williams, who's the Director of Air Traffic Services and Infrastructure and the association's liaison with the new Emerging Technologies Committee. You can learn a lot more about the Emerging Technologies Committee at the NBAA website. Go to nbaa.org/emerging-tech. And that's the latest from the National Business Aviation Association. Remember, you can subscribe to all Flight Plan podcasts at Apple's iTunes website, wherever you find your favorite podcasts, or you can download them from nbaa.org. I'm Pete Combs. Thanks for listening to Flight Plan.